so many flavors that I've been through too many of them, and I wish that I could just explain it all in one video, but that's definitely not gonna happen. Eventually we'll be doing Zoom meetings or calls, so at least I'll know my audience. I've seen a lot, I've been through a lot, but when I was younger, it was just different. There was a lot of daycares, a lot of babysitters that a lot of my preschools that had that did things to the point where it called for legal action. Miss you too, Chase. Love you. We love you. Okay, so one time, and again, this daycare is still thriving. This daycare is still alive today. This daycare is still a sister facility everywhere. I believe not just in California. I don't even know how old I was. I think I was probably maybe 7. Maybe. I had to be younger. When I went to school, it was, you went to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, you got out at like 3:04, 3:30. When you were in kindergarten, you got out at noon. For me, it was, I had 2 older sisters at the time, and they were able to go to the daycares, or they were able to go to big facilities, but I couldn't because I was younger. And I had a issue where I was potty trained, but I couldn't hold it. So I always had like this issue where I would pee on myself.
Probably PTSD stuff.
So, certain people just wouldn't take me. They wouldn't watch me. They wouldn't take me. So, I had to go to this daycare with the younger kids. I think I had to be younger. I think I was in kindergarten, maybe 1st grade, maybe. So I had to be. I was probably about 6. Getting younger every time on. But I was kindergarten or 1st grade because you got out early. So the daycare would come and pick us up, and they would take us to the daycare, and there would be nap time. There'd be a snack, and when you wake up from your nap time, you can play a little bit, but then when you wake up from your nap time, then usually the older kids were coming in and they were getting out of school. In this daycare, I seen a lot of things happen to other kids. I seen the daycare workers do stuff to the babies that were dropped off there, because the babies were always kept in like the cribs in a different place. The kids knew that you just didn't want to be alone with any of the workers. Everybody knew that. There were kind of these little nooks and hallways in the daycare, and how can I breathe? There's this lady black, light skin. Very, 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 very heavy set. I remember screaming at the top of my lungs. I remember throwing things. I remember tearing up the entire daycare. She had touched me, and she told me that she was going to take me while everybody else had nap time, and that me and her were going to go for nap time. I flipped out. I was throwing things at her. I was throwing things at the daycare workers. They tried to pick me up and take me out of the area of the other kids. And I remember screaming and crying and hanging on to the walls and everything that I could get my hands on the way out, and begging them not to let her take me. I remember they threatened to call who was my mother at the time, and everybody knew that she was evil. Everybody knew that she was mean. Everyone knew that it took one phone call and the kids that was with her wasn't showing up to school or wasn't showing up to daycare for weeks at a time because of bruises that wouldn't heal. So they threatened to call her and tell her that I was acting up and being bad. It was something that was well known for this daycare. It wasn't just the workers. After a certain point, it was the big kids against the little kids.
The workers watch?
Yeah, they wouldn't do anything. There was this little boy who would this kid who would tear me up. He wasn't a little boy, he was older than me. And I'm tiny now, so I was a tiny little thing back then. And I remember the way the daycare faced the street. There was like a hill, and there was a fence that you could climb up on and see the street from like a height. And I remember I used to run from this kid, and he would slam me against this gate and try to touch me, and the workers did nothing. They would watch, they would laugh. I remember at one point they came up with like a line on the playground to not let the little kids play with the big kids anymore because things got out of hand. So it wasn't just the daycare workers, it was the kids against the kids. And it was because the kids saw what the daycare workers would do to other kids. There was the way that this specific daycare was set up. When you walk into the door, there was like a long counter, and it was like a wraparound wall. So you couldn't walk in and see what was going on into the daycare. You would have to keep walking and wrap around this hallway until you got inside the daycare. And it was perfect because parents couldn't just walk into the daycare. They always knew when somebody was coming. And if you are there all the time, your parents are at work, you know that your parents are going to tell you don't act up and just drop you back off, you're not going to say anything or tell on the workers because things could get worse for you. So a lot of people, kids just kept their mouths shut when your family came to pick you up. They would come pick me up and I had black eyes and clothes torn up and messed up, and she played really hard today. She was messing around with that little boy, playing around with that little boy today. And there was always an excuse of how it was my fault. And again, I was there early, so I was little. I was there hours before, I think, at least 4th through 6th grade at the time. There was a lot of daycares like that. There was a lot of...
Did you attend any daycares that were decent or good?
No.
So like I've told you before, in her sophomore, junior year of high school, she was in 19 foster homes, 19 high schools, and they were all corrupt and they were all bad. It's the same with the daycares. By my estimate, she's probably been 20 daycares, not including elementary school, not including preschool and private babysitters. They were all corrupt and bad. She doesn't have one good memory of any of them. So that's what I mean when I say that there's like kind of two different things going on. There's like normal middle class America, head in the sand, everything's fine, and then there's this other faction of people that just seem to run together and work with each other. The law of averages would say at some point you would have to have a decent somebody, but that's not the case, and that's kind of how SRA works. They kind of stay in their own circles and work in their own circles. But how many times have corrupt child SRA daycares come up? You remember the McMartin preschool? Who got the blame for that? The kids. The kids got the blame for that. The kids were the ones that were lying on the adults. You can take what those kids at McMartin preschool said and put it up against kids in Australia that have come out about things going on in their preschool, and they'll match. That's just impossible with